Need a website for your business, but not looking to break the bank for one? I've got you covered. Hi, it's me, Ashley M. Lyle, founder and CEO of BLAQN and host of the Black Queens on Stage podcast. And yes, I also have a website business, Sites by Lyle. I can create a dynamic website for your business that will showcase your work, wow potential clients, and close more sales. So contact me on my Instagram at Sites by Lyle to schedule your free 30-minute evaluation so we can get you started on your new website. Welcome to the Black Queens on Stage podcast, presented by Black Literature and Art Queens Network, where we bring our queens to the stage. Welcome to the podcast where we honor and acknowledge Black women performers and discuss racial issues within Michigan performing venues. I'm Ashley M. Lyle, and today I am joined by the wonderfully talented mezzo-soprano, opera chorus singer, Tiffanie Waldron. Hi, Tiffanie. How are you today?
Hi, Ashley. How are you?
I'm great. So why don't you describe to me your style of opera?
I don't know if I particularly have a style. I mean, I kind of fell into it as a happy accident, if that makes much sense. I just go into whatever I can learn. Like I'm such a learner. So, because I didn't study this in school, per se. I mean, I studied voice, but not opera as my main focus. So when I am into all of these operas, it's like a brand new thing for me. I'm learning about that composer. I'm learning about the styles, and I don't really have a particular style that I fall into, like at all. So I think, singing wise, what I know that I am a dramatic mezzo based on like my range of how I sing. So it's pretty cool because I end up singing all of these different parts as, I perform. And I could be singing the highest of keys. I could be singing the lowest of notes. And it's just so cool to just join. And I love the experience. I really just don't have a particular style.
Mm-hmm. What inspired you to pursue opera?
My undergrad vocal professor, the second one I had, the first one happened to retire after my first year. Her name is Professor Seeger. She was an opera singer and she traveled around the world, and she also sang with the Michigan Opera Theater. And at my recital, my senior recital, she was talking to my parents and to myself, and she was like saying, I really think you should think about going for like a master's of music and vocal performance, and you should probably look into the Michigan Opera Theater. She's like, chorus auditions are, every so often, and you might want to look into it and see if that's something for you. So I was like, all right, like it would be kind of fun. Like, I've never really have been in an opera, and I'm like, I knew something about it, but I was like, I don't really know much. But I auditioned, and my first opera was Porgy and Bess, and I absolutely loved it, Ashley. I couldn't tell you how much joy it was to me to finish like working for the day and coming to Detroit and doing all these rehearsals with all these wonderful, fabulous singers. And then when it was time to actually do the production and we're on stage, and it was just beautiful. I loved it. And I kind of got addicted to the whole thing.
So you got the chance to do Porgy and Bess. How long ago was that, if you don't mind me asking?
That was in 2006.
Okay.
Is when I was able to do Porgy and Bess. So that was my first opera with the Michigan Opera Theater.
I haven't gotten the chance to see that show, and I'm dying to see it.
Wow, it's so beautiful. While we were in lockdown a few weeks ago, they were showing on the local PBS public television channel. They were showing the Porgy and Bess production that they did just recently at the Met. So just as nostalgia, I put it on. It was really late in the night, because I was kind of tired. And I know it's like a 3-hour show.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to just sit and watch it. And I'm just recalling the fun I had. And I'm just singing this thing over and over again. I absolutely I loved it. So it's a fantastic show if you ever get a chance to see it, live or in person, or live or online.
Yeah, I tried to get a chance to see it. And, I went to like the regular PBS channel 56, to see if it was recorded, if it came on. And I don't know, I didn't see it. But then I realized that it was showing on like I guess the premium PBS channel. I don't know. It was.
Wow, I didn't know there was a premium PBS channel.
I know you wouldn't think so, right? But according to the cable package that I have, the Porgy and Bess showed up on that channel, and I don't have that channel, so I thought that was just strange. I don't know, but it might be. I'm pretty sure it's on the PBS website, and I can just probably watch it from there.
Yeah, give it a try. It's just fantastic. It's hard, I think, in the beginning. I guess it's a little bit chaotic in how things are going, and you're not really sure. This is what I've heard from my parents who saw this years ago when I was in it. And they said it was a little bit hard in the beginning to figure out what was going on. But, there's a pivotal moment in the show, like early on, that it starts to catch their attention a little bit more, and they can follow along and see what's going around. But it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Music is wonderful.
So when you're performing, what would you say the audience looks like? Would you say that there's more women, more men, more Black people, more white people?
It's hard to see, out in the audience because, I don't particularly look out there. I'm so engrossed in having the fun on stage. That's just the personal joy for myself. But your audience is mostly white because from what I can see from the first couple of rows out and then looking around, it's mostly white members that you're seeing. Older people in the box seats that you can see from the stage as well. It's mostly white. I know there are people of color going to the opera, but they might be sitting more likely, in the back rows based on price of tickets or whatever, and maybe in the balcony section, which you really can't see fully who's up there.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever notice there's a difference in energy between, say, a Black audience versus a white audience?
Well, when we did Porgy and Bess, that was probably more predominantly Black. I think I remember they actually advertised and did little mini concerts at churches around Detroit, the Detroit area. Mm-hmm. So we had a lot of, African-American members coming to the opera. And that was a lot of, you felt it. But, I'm not sure if it's any big difference. I think because of that particular show, it has such a great, rich history that everyone loves it. Mm-hmm. Depending, I think the storyline is what really ends up deciding what's the energy of the audience. When we have the student and senior dress rehearsal the day before, that's always what we call just to ourselves that's our tester audience, because they're gonna give you the cheers or the jeers if they love it, or you're not gonna hear anything if they don't like it. So that's always how we gauge. So there's been some shows where they're cheering so loud at the beginning of the second act, after, intermission. And you got something that they're really interested in. And that's always exciting.
So what would you say, what kind of techniques you've learned in your artistic career as an opera chorus singer that got you to where you are today?
I did do classical training in school because my bachelor's is in music education. So voice was my predominant instrument. But, we didn't focus so much in my lessons at that point, we didn't focus on learning the languages like Italian, French, and German. I didn't learn how to enunciate them correctly. I learned just to do what I needed to do was the whole idea. So when I went into the opera scene and I had to, the first day you come into rehearsal, you better know how to sight read your music, or you have better practice before you come in. You're already told this is not university. You better come in as a professional and know your stuff. So I wasn't that great at remembering how to pronounce my Italian words or my French or my German. So I had to learn that quickly and learn how to do it more efficiently so I can actually produce what I need to and be on target. I had to learned how to be a lot more disciplined, like very disciplined in practicing, because you can have rehearsals will usually run like Monday, Wednesday, sometimes Friday nights, not our favorite, Saturdays and Sundays. So, you can have rehearsal on Monday and we can we'll run through like probably the entire score based on how much time you have. Time is usually about 2 hours of rehearsal time. That's like the least that they can do, and then it can do more. You will go through it. She will let you know, hey, I'm gonna keep you on track. Have this memorized and be ready to sing it off book for the next rehearsal. And that's Monday night. So you're leaving like at 10 o'clock at night. I'm going home. I still have to work all day Tuesday, and I have other jobs or stuff to do. And then Wednesday I have to work again. And then you have to go to rehearsal that night, and you better have it because you're looked at. And, it's based on how quickly you can turn around your music, have it memorized, and be ready to go. So those are one of the biggest things, especially with my languages as well. I finally got to sing a German opera. I sang a French opera, which I was super scared about, probably still am. I also got to sing a French opera, not French, Russian. We did Onegin, and I forgot. I think it was like 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And that was in Russian. So we had a Russian diction coach who came in and worked with us for a couple of rehearsals. And then we had to go home and practice. And I was walking around my school building when I had a free moment, like practicing Russian, because I needed to get that done. I needed to work on it and make sure it was sounding like Russian, because you were called out, not usually like individually, but you got the look that, hey, you got to fix it. Okay, sorry about that.
No, don't worry about it. Okay. So the different languages that you had to learn with the different songs that you've had to practice, how did you learn those complicated languages? Like what practicing techniques did you use to get them ingrained in your mind?
So when we started rehearsals, your first day of rehearsals, you either pick up your score if you didn't have it. I got into the practice of purchasing the score beforehand. I just wanted it for my own personal, use, to make sure I can do all the notes I want to write in it. So you will go over, or the maestra will go ahead and go over all of the enunciations. So she will go through the entire score and she will say it. We will say it back to her. She wants to just check it and make sure that we're on target. I will normally, and some other people did this too, make a recording of her, of our speech during that first rehearsal. Some people were really good at either condensing what she did and then sending out a practice track for everybody, which was really kind of them. But earlier on, like in the early years, we would just record it, and then I would go back home and practice and learn it. And eventually I learned like what certain vowels will sound like. And when you have like certain like combinations of letters, what you should do and how to make that sound. And then you just get into the hang of it, for me personally. So that's how I worked on them. I also have a vocal teacher. So I would create a lesson with her, and then I'll go with her and go to her home, and then we will practice together because, I told her that's my goal. I want to make sure that I'm singing everything correctly and I've got what I wanted to. So it's an investment, just to go for a lesson or two and just to check up on it. But it's pretty much like practice continuously. And even when I'm not working,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not at rehearsal, and I will write things down like in a little notebook. And when I have a little break with my time, I would sit there and I will read through it and I will just say it. And I sometimes I record myself while I'm saying it and then just play it back to myself just to make sure I've got it. but I would do that. Um, Another way to go over those languages and just to make sure I have it is I always listen to a recording. So you have to be careful because, sometimes, some professionals are not always singing everything correctly, but whatever. So I will just try to find a decent recording based on recommendations, and I will listen to how they enunciate words in those languages and practice. And then once I was comfortable enough, I will go ahead and do it with the melodic line and go from there.
That's so cool. I um I had a voice teacher several years back, and she was teaching me to sing Ave Maria. And
Oh,
yeah, and it was I of course, growing up Catholic, I only knew just that one part.
yeah.
But then
You have to
the
start somewhere.
yeah, but then the rest of it, as she was, working with me to sing the song, it was just growing more and more complicated because I just did not know the words at all. And thankfully it wasn't anything like for an upcoming performance or anything. She just wanted me to practice it, but it was so complicated. I can't even imagine having to try to compress all of that information in such a short amount of time to be ready for a show.
It's a lot. I've always had really good success, especially in college as well, in memorizing music and being able to like just sing it for like juries or my recital. So I never had that hardship, but I mean, it's still difficult no matter whenever you're doing it, because I have never in my career repeated a show or
Mhm.
production. So I have learned 20 something brand new operas every single time.
Wow.
I mean, I've never had that luxury. And, it's funny because we audition every single year. And I just happened to look at my resume like probably a few years ago. And I'm like, wait a minute, I've never repeated a show. And it's like, I'm like, I have been working like 10 times harder than some people because some of my friends have already repeated a show. So they didn't have to do that much work and prep for like that particular opera. But for some
Mhm.
interesting reason, I just never got hired for that show when it was out the first time. And I was like, oh, like everyone else is like, oh, I know how to do this. And I'm like, I don't got a clue. I don't know how this goes. So it was kind of crazy there.
I've had the chance to perform at Detroit Opera House, but it was for their extras thing.
Hmm.
And the opera that I was a part of was Electra, and
Oh, yes.
that was a pretty interesting show. That was pretty interesting. The most that I remember from it, because so much was just going on that I can't even remember everything. But what I remember the most was that we had to dress up, looking like tattered old villagers. And then there was this one part where they needed somebody to give the guttural scream, like in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And I had to so I had to do the scream.
Oh,
And
great.
but it was so funny because it was like a quick scream off in the
Hmm.
rehearsal room, and they said, "Okay, we need somebody to scream. Who can scream?" And it was like five of us where we raised our hands, and they asked us to scream, and then they ended up picking me to do it, which it was so interesting. So, but just the whole thing, it was actually like the first gig that I had where I actually got paid, in a theatrical sense.
Huh.
And it was very interesting, really, really cool. I got to meet some fantastic singers.
Yeah, that was a cool show. I actually was in that show too.
You were?
Um,
Wait, was it? Oh gosh.
it was at the very end. There wasn't a lot of chorus members, and I think what what they wanted was that, I guess at the very like end, they decided that they wanted this chorus part to be sung because Electra doesn't have a chorus really.
Hmm.
There's like one little small part, and so I got an email and it was like, hey, can you sing this part for us? Blah, 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 come there. And so there was a group of us that got to come and we sang in the pit, the orchestra pit. So that's why you didn't see us. We just came in black. We sang our part for like 2 minutes. I think it was not even that long. And then we left. That was it.
Gotcha. You know, and I remember, and that was like what, in 2011?
Oh, I don't remember. Electra? No, it had to have been earlier. It had to be later than that. I would say 2015, 2016.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably that's probably around that time.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a group of people standing in black in the hallway. That's so weird.
That's it. That was us. Yep. We had to wear all black. We had to stand in the hallway because we had to go into the pit and we wanted to stick out. Mm-hmm. But people, I mean, of course, like people who were in the front row will have they would have saw us.
Right.
You know. And of course the balcony saw us and we sang and then we left.
That's so small world, you know? Small world. So performing is not your full-time career, correct?
No.
Okay. So do you want to talk about what your full-time job is and how you find that balance between opera and your regular job?
Yeah. So I am an elementary vocal music teacher. So I teach the babies and I get them interested in music from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully not from the beginning, because I think parents should be working with them before that. But either way.
And how do you find that balance between teaching and opera?
As best of a time management as I possibly can, or however I can do it, because it's very time consuming because I'm teaching. And as anyone who knows an effective teacher, you're working all the time. Mm-hmm. Like I'm on all the time. Like if in the summer, I'll be sitting here, I'll think of something or I'll see something and I'll be writing it down. I'll be creating lessons, looking for whatever I can. So in the normal work day, I'll be planning, doing whatever I need. And as I told you before, when I had like a free moment when I didn't have to do anything school related, I had my music with me. I had my music score in my bag, or I had my note cards that had all of my pronunciations I need to work on. And I was practicing and I was doing it. So I will be, let's say like a typical like Wednesday. So in Wednesday was my hardest days because I had to be out of my home for like pretty much the whole day. So I would wake up like at 6, get ready for work, go into work, set up for my day, teach for the whole day. Then at the end of the school day, that was the day that we had staff meetings, which are awful if you ever have to sit through any of those. I can't stand sitting through staff meetings, especially when they have nothing to do with the music teacher.
Right.
So I will sit through the staff meeting. That will be over at 5:30. And then I would have either rehearsal at 6:30 p.m. in Detroit, and that would take me like over an hour to get there from where my location was.
Oh, goodness.
Or I would have rehearsal at 7 o'clock, which would be a saving grace, because then I get to at least drive to my house a little bit, drop off my bag and my computer and everything like that from work, change out of clothes if I wanted to get something comfortable on, because I'm always for business wear at school. That's just my thing. And then I will go to rehearsal and I'll be in rehearsal for either 2 to 3 hours that night. Then I have to drive back home and I probably won't get home until like 10:30, 11. And then I'm either trying to make a late dinner, try to catch up on cleaning part of my house, and then taking a shower, going to bed, and do it all again the next day.
Wow. Man, that's gotta be crazy. So with your lesson plans, you must have them like done in advance, like at least a month in advance, especially when you're doing a show, right?
No. Absolutely not. I do not have them done. I wish I was like that, like super duper dedicated. I mean, I love my job. Don't get me wrong. I'm a highly effective teacher. I've been rated pretty well, but I just have the time management where I know what I need to do and get done and make sure that nothing just falls out of step. So, I mean, when I'm lesson planning, I have like a blueprint. Like I usually write down a little blueprint for myself and I usually keep it, or I end up like tossing it because I have pretty much a good photographic memory on some of those things, especially because I've been teaching for such a long time at this point. So I would just like have a blueprint. I know where the kids need to go and what steps I need to take. And then I will go ahead, and that way when I write my lesson plans each week, I know what progression we need to take, we need to go for each grade, because I'm teaching young fives, which are like 4-year-olds who are turning 5 late in the year, but before the cutoff, but their parents need them. The parents know that they need a little bit more time to grow before they're ready for kindergarten. And then I teach up to 5th grade. So I have to plan for a young fives class, kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, fifth. And then I have special needs students that have special classes. So I have to plan for them as well. And then I have to do all their modifications. So, I kind of know the order of how everyone has to go. And I've gotten pretty good at managing my time to make sure I get all that stuff done before I start practicing. Because when I'm home and I don't have to go to rehearsal that evening, although I'm tired, I know I have to get that in so that I at least I don't fall behind. And I've gotten pretty good at juggling all of them.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Okay, I'm switch gears a little bit.
Cool.
So as a Black woman in a white dominated industry such as opera, what kind of obstacles or challenges have you faced because you're Black and a woman, and how did you overcome them?
I haven't really had much challenges except for when it comes to like costuming and like how the show's going to run. So, cultural appropriation is something that I'm becoming a lot more aware of in my teaching career and in the opera career. And we did a particular show where we had to we were singing things that were, and I didn't realize it until just in the last 2 years or so, that were just offensive to the Asian culture, for example. And it's, now I think about it, and when we were wearing the makeup, and we had to slant our eyes with it, I feel a way. And I'm like, oh wow, should I have been doing that? I'm so aware of the stereotypes and the biases people have about me as being a Black woman. And I know how certain things feel. And now it's like, oh my goodness, is this how, was I doing that to someone else? And that's where I, feel the guilt of doing it. And I wonder now, what are they going to do with these shows moving forward? Are they going to ever bring them back? If they do bring them back, the wording of some of these pieces, the costuming. I saw one show that I was not a part of in a particular season. And they had some people they had orange makeup all over their body. And I'm assuming they were trying to be tan or dark or whatever. But one, it looked extremely weird from being off stage because I was sitting in the audience. But, I remember at that point, I just looked at it and I was like, okay, why are we all wearing orange makeup? What was the whole point of it? Right. And it's I know I got what they were trying to do, but I was like, I don't think that's okay. And I was like, I feel like it was a little bit like blackface for it. They also did another show that I was a part of. They did darken some of the people, and I don't think they did their faces. I don't know if they did their bodies. It was just weird and how it was. I had to go back and look at pictures and see how that fit. But the one that when I was off stage, that's what I really recognized. And I was like, that's not good.
Right. And it's, when it comes to situations like that, and there's things that took me a minute to really realize where my privilege as a light-skinned Black woman, where that privilege is constantly exuded. And I had to learn from that myself, particularly stating Book of Mormon. I love Book of Mormon. I think it's hilarious. And then as I watched it more and more and started seeing different things and then learning about different things and then seeing where this new way of thinking is transferring into what I am seeing in Book of Mormon, I realized how incredibly racist that show is. And then there is a purpose to it because it's the same creators as Avenue Q. Avenue Q has racism jokes in it as well. And I was actually in Avenue Q and I played Gary Coleman. I realize now playing this caricature version of Gary Coleman, who is this iconic actor and who doesn't deserve to be portrayed in this sense, it is damaging to his legacy. But getting back to Book of Mormon, seeing how me, one, as an American, two, as a light-skinned Black woman, me enjoying this show and then trying to want to be a part of that show is a level of privilege that is just astounding. And I have to personally realize that while it may seem funny to me, it may not be funny to someone who is from Africa or particularly from Uganda and see this show and see how incredibly racist and xenophobic it is.
It's really difficult, again, with like this, it's not like this was like brand new, but like now everyone's eyes and the spotlight on the world is on this whole topic.
Mm-hmm.
And just looking at all the things that I've done back in the past, even with my teaching, I won't name what the program is because I don't want to shame it, but there was a particular program that I used to teach my students how to play an instrument. And, they always gave them like an award after they passed like a certain level. And for like a concert, I used to purchase like, these like materials and I would have them wear it for the concert. And we like try to like emulate a certain like style of like fighting. And it was not that I realized, and I know what's going on, I'm so ashamed that I actually participated in that. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And I had students who were of that nationality or that culture. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what did their families think when I put this on? I mean, they didn't say anything to me. And I wish they did, because I always tell like my students, I said, look, honesty is best. Just talk it out. I said, if I'm wrong, I'm going to say I'm wrong. And I was wrong big time in doing that. Mm-hmm. So, I always tell them like, just tell me and we'll work through it together. But, a lot of the shows, when I go back and I just look and learn about these things and I see, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so inappropriate. Who was that offensive to? Mm-hmm. Because I know how it feels for me when I hear people like, singing songs that I know are racist. When I see people like, for example, like they're always using the Confederate flag, swinging it around, and you know how that makes you feel. So I'm like, well, how did we make everyone else feel or another person feel when we actually did all of those shows?
Right.
So I'm excited to see how the opera world is going to evolve, and hopefully the musical world evolved as well. I did see Book of Mormon, so I do know what you're talking about. But when you think back and realize how some of these things played out, it's like, wow, I did not know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's and I created a Black actor conference series with several fellow Black actors, and we talked about the racism within Michigan theater. But the one thing that I definitely want to put across, especially on my podcast, is that I'm still learning and figuring out what is incorrect for me, to accept, to laugh about, to want to do. I remember a long time ago when I was speaking with my mentor and I read the play M. Butterfly, which is a derivative of the show Madam Butterfly. And I just fell in love with the story, and I was telling him about it. And mind you, my mentor is an older white gentleman. And I told him about the play, and he says, yes, I'm very familiar with the show, but let me ask you this, darling. Can you play in that show? And I thought, and it took me a minute, and I'm like, well, and Butterfly is an Asian man dressed up as a woman. So he said, so then there you go. You can't play it on several levels. You can't play it because you're not a Japanese man. You can't play it because you're not a man, And he told me a long time ago, make sure that you pick, when you're doing monologues, to pick shows that are the closest to you, where you know that you can play it. And I think about it every time I go through a show that either doesn't list specifically if this person is of any race, if it does state specifically of a particular race, if it's a Black person, if it's a Black woman, what age bracket it is. And it's a lot of different elements that I personally have to make sure that I'm on the nose with. Well, then now there's that extra level of making sure that I'm picking the right shows for me to practice on. I could never, as much as I may want to, I could never play Timoon in Once on This Island, and I could never be the leading lady in Memphis, the musical, because those two roles are specifically for dark-skinned Black women.
Right. the founder of Michigan Opera Theater, Dr. D. Kiera, he really wanted to give people of color an opportunity to shine and to start their careers. So, in a sense, I understand that we cannot play everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have to go back and look at it because off the top of my head, I don't really know who didn't play a role that was probably not meant, I guess, look-wise for them in opera. But he had a lot of people of color for principals for certain roles. And that was always great to see on my level because I'm like, oh, well, if I ever decide I want to move up, hopefully one day I'll get a chance at an opera company that will, give me that shot. But he would always make sure that always have people of color doing roles that you didn't see around the world. And that was always great. But in turn, you also think, I'm trying to see, were there any roles that were not meant? I'm wondering, what does it mean, if a Black person plays a role for someone who traditionally, quote unquote, has always been played by a white person?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do we have to really go back and probably do and really research the role and see, does it say anything about their skin or hair? I think, for example, to see if that's going to be, something that they shouldn't play or not shouldn't play. It's just not for them and they shouldn't play on the screen. I know for Porgy and Bess, and I know I'm going back to that a lot, but I know this is a really great example, is that, a lot of white singers want to sing in Porgy and Bess because the music is absolutely gorgeous. And
Mm-hmm.
I just don't blame you. It's beautiful. Summertime is one of the most famous, arias to sing by a soprano, and it's beautiful. But you're not going to get a Black, or a white person, to sing that on a stage production. But when it's concert versions, they usually do,
Mm-hmm.
or they can, I should say, not usually, but they can. It's an option. So I wonder, and that would be something for me to think about and to grow, and for your listeners to think about as well. Do we think it's okay if, white performers sing roles that are supposed to be meant for Black people in the concert versions on stage?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a moment where a theater production or a whatever production, it may be caught between a rock and a hard place, because with a show like Porgy and Bess, which is historically known and historically required for Black actors to be in that show, to have it in concert form and where you're having white singers perform any one of those songs.
Yeah, it's how do people feel?
Particularly if there is specific words that would apply to Black people in the song, then a white person should not sing it. Take, for example, The Wiz.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh.
I can't remember which song it is, but I know that there is a lyric where they say 5 on the black hand side. You can't.
I think it's for that's for the crows.
Yeah, you can't expect a white person to sing that line. You just can't, because it's that line in particular is specific to the Black culture. You know what I mean? So you can't really expect a white person or think that you can give that song to a white person to sing it, because it just doesn't fit.
Correct. Yeah. It's funny because I actually did that show in high school. The Wiz. I was at a Pearl. That was such a great show. And it was funny because I went to a boarding school for my senior year, and it was an international school, so there were really not that many Black people. It was a really small school. Mm-hmm. in the scope of from where I used to go before that. So we had The Wiz, and I auditioned for to play whatever, and they were really wanting me to do Dorothy, and I said I couldn't do it. I didn't want to do it because I knew I needed to focus on my studies. That's how crazy I was at the time. So I had to focus on my studies, and I'm I really did not want to have such a huge role. So I was I want to take a lesser role just to do that. But I wondered if I wonder if my teacher, and I can find her online, if she ever thought about doing this show with like pretty much a predominantly like, you know, really light skinned white like cast. So it's very interesting
Yeah.
how that will work out.
And another show that I've seen plenty of theaters do, particularly community theater, they do the show Thoroughly Modern Millie, and has a it was so funny because I've only heard a few songs here and there from Thoroughly Modern Millie, and I just love the music. So I purchased the CD before seeing the show, and I tend to do that sometimes because I want to see what the music sounds like before I actually see the show. And I listened to the music, and there was one song in particular by The Landlord, and it kind of struck me a little bit. So then when I actually watched the show, I found it on YouTube. This landlady, and I'm probably saying what her character is incorrectly, but she was a white woman portraying an Asian character in the most derogatory, stereotypical way, you know? And it was very cringy to watch, you know? It's just, and I can understand why some people will want to do a show so badly. However, when you have a show like Thoroughly Modern Millie or Avenue Q, particularly Avenue Q because the show is based on racist jokes. However, if you're doing a show like Thoroughly Modern Millie or Avenue Q, and you have a white woman playing this Asian character, you know, that's not good at all. You know, because now you're going to be portraying this racist stereotype about Asian people and the way that they speak, drawing makeup around your eyes to make them look more almond shaped, and then that just ends up not being a good scene. You know, I had several conversations about this show, Ragtime, and I talk about Ragtime a lot because I have a love-hate relationship for it. But, you know, with a show like Ragtime, it has such a heavy responsibility of getting across racism, xenophobia, elitism, and people just want to do that show because it's such a gorgeous show. The music is gorgeous, and I'm definitely not doubting that, but there is a heavy responsibility to get the messages across that show properly.
Right. We have started doing in the past few years at the Opera House was we've done like shows that were for predominantly Black, singers. We sang, what was that show called again? Oh, and I just did it and I'm totally blanking out. It was a baseball show. Man, I cannot remember this show.
Baseball show,
Gosh, it was a baseball opera and I'm trying to think. Oh, Josh Gibson was the name. Oh,
you said it was a baseball opera?
Yeah, I cannot remember this thing off the top of my head. I'll have to like search for this and look for it. I'll think it'll come to me in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But it was so great because, you know, the show was written, the only characters that had to be Black were pretty much the principal characters. So for the most part, we did have in the chorus, which was great. We had a lot of people of color singing in the chorus with like a few white participants in it. So that was always great. I had another friend of the Opera House who brought her students. She also teaches, she teaches older students music. And she had them come to the show as an audience, part of the audience. And part of her lesson when they got back to school was that they had to write a letter to a character and explain what they loved about that character. And she read us some of the letters in the dressing room, and my heart just was so full. Those kids, representation matters 100%.
Absolutely.
Those kids loved the show. Oh, Summer King. Yes, I remember the name of the show.
I just pulled it up and I was about to ask you, is it called Summer King?
Yes, Summer King. I just remembered. Oh, bless my heart. So those kids loved it. And like a lot of them wrote about like how they saw themselves in that character.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to relate to their feelings when they were singing certain things. They might not know everything because it might be a little bit above their head for some of the content.
Right.
But they understood it. It was so great. And I loved that. And, when I teach, I'm teaching younger students, and in my classroom, I'm all about representation. So when I'm showing like video music clips of certain things, or I'm reading books, I always make sure everyone's going to see themselves in something. They have to. So I'll show a clip, and I think I was showing like the Nutcracker. We were learning the Nutcracker. We learned about Tchaikovsky in December because I think some of the kids were going to see the Nutcracker. So I was like, oh, we're going to learn about him and, find out what's going on. And
Mhm.
I was showing them little clips of the story. And I would make sure I would find an Asian like dancer, or I would find a Black dancer, or I found a white dancer. I always try to I looked at my students and I'm looking for videos, and it might take me a really long time to find that online, but I still found it, and
Mhm.
I showed it to them, and they saw it, and they kind of related. So the cute thing when you teach kindergarten, it's kind of fun. I give them a little free time at the end of the class, so they can like explore things that we didn't do in class that day, like instruments, or they can dance or whatever. And I would get kids who would tell me, "Can you put that music back on again?"
Mm.
Because they saw themselves in it and they want to
Mhm.
just dance to it. And I said, "Okay," and I'll let them do it.
That's so
Um,
great.
it's beautiful.
Oh, I love
And
it when kids connect to musicals or music, theater in some kind of way, because theater and music, it really does shape a kid a lot more than what we really realize. And it's a terrible shame, and it's something that needs to be fought for harder to make sure that art stays in schools and that there's enough money funding for it.
absolutely. When we had this pandemic and we had the lockdown, you know, my school district, well, we all locked down at the same time. So, but
Mhm.
we actually were a little bit more proactive because they saw the writing on the wall. And so we were getting out all of those technology pieces to kids. We asked parents, we're like, tell us now, tell us now. We had like drive ups, everything. They were really working hard. So I do credit them a lot for what they were doing.
Mhm.
But, what we had to do for the remainder of the year for a quote unquote special area, we like to say essential because we are.
Yes,
Uh,
you are.
we had we had to plan lessons once a week to put up on a platform for each grade level. And you can combine the levels. That was fine. It wasn't a big deal. But you can like do like second and third grade together, for example. But anyway, so we'll put the stuff up, and they will reply to it and respond, and then we'll go back and check it. I did not have a lot of students jumping on and doing our particular lessons for numerous reasons. But one of the nice things was that I got about like one or two parents who wrote a separate email and said, "Thank you so much for what you're doing. It's really difficult. We're having a hard time, but I want to let you know you might not see us actually physically sending in an answer to what you're doing, but my child is logging on every week at Monday at 8 a.m. to see what you guys posted, and they want to do it. And we have to ration it out to make sure they don't do all of it in one day because they said they loved it. I mean, they said it's a lot because it's overwhelming, and we understood. Like I was like, look, I know we're in a pandemic. This is never something we ever expected to happen. We knew it was going to come. I mean, looking at history, but
Right.
you're just always surprised that it's going to be your time. So they just said we couldn't really do it, but we enjoy it, and it's such a great way to get kids to be creative. I mean, I could get kids, I'm like, make up a story. And some kids just get so stuck and they can't do it. Like, I will put on classical pieces of music, and I like to put on opera because that's just my love. And I put it on and I'm like, listen. And I'm like, what do you think the story's about? What do you feel? What's going on? You're trying to get them to start talking and expressing themselves verbally. Or if they can't do it that way, I'm like, go ahead and dance. I said, that's another expression. I'm
Mhm.
like, or go ahead, and I give them a piece of paper and I'm like, go ahead and color and draw. They're like, that's a part of music. I'm like, absolutely.
Mhm.
I was like, absolutely. You have to see it in all different ways. And I'm like, I always tell them like it's not always about can you do music? Can you sing? Can you play? It's can you respect the arts? Do you know how to appreciate it? Can you interpret it? what is your feeling? I said, there's never a right and wrong answer. I was like, you just need to be able to just like tell us what you feel and show someone your side. I said, it's a great way. I said, when I perform on stage, I said, I don't always know everything that it means, like the words. I mean, eventually I do go back and look it up, but I have to produce that feeling. What do I feel? What's that interpretation? If the director's not giving it to you, you're going to have to show something, because you don't want to walk on stage and just sing and walk off. Mm-hmm. You actually have to show, like, have some emotion, because you're trying to get the audience to feel something, and how should they react to certain things. That's the whole point. And I said, it just all ties in together. Mm-hmm. So, it's just a beautiful thing. And I'm always excited when I can get, my students to really feel something.
Yeah.
You don't like it? Cool. Why don't you like it? And they look at me stunned, and I'm like, nope. You got to have an answer. I can't just say I don't like something. Give us a reason. I said, that's so cool. Sometimes I always tell them, like, hey, be a lawyer. State your case. I'm like, you might be a lawyer someday. I'm excited. I'm like, just tell us why you don't like. I'm like, it's okay to agree to disagree, but I want you to be able to do that. The music does all of those things for people, which is just fantastic.
What kind of moral support do you get for your artistic, for your teaching and your opera career?
Oh, like for my family and such, or friends?
Mm-hmm. Family, friends.
Oh, well, it's funny because pretty much most of my friends are part of the opera. They're part of the music scene. So, I mean, we all know our struggles, Yeah. I mean, we still talk about it. We all know, like, yay, our successes, our sadnesses, sadness. With my parents, my parents are not from America. They're from Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm a first generation born in America here. Mm-hmm. So, music is like not really like, I guess, a career that you're supposed to follow. They want you to be like a doctor or a lawyer. And my brother has followed that path. And that's good for him. God bless him. But, I could have possibly done that, but it wasn't that wasn't my love. I loved music so much, and I was so into it. When I got a chance to learn, I think my first instrument I actually learned was to play the violin when I was in fifth grade, and my family moved to like a certain spot, and that had a huge music program. So I was able to start learning, and I just took off with it. And, when I went to school, I went to school for computer information systems. I was good at computers. I was excellent. I did like it, but I didn't love it. Mm-hmm. So I eventually did get a chance to change my major to music education. I just auditioned on a whim. Like I was like, maybe I can teach music. I'm like, do I like kids that much? I don't know. I'll just, try it out. So I auditioned, got into it. I tried it. I mean, seriously, I did not know if I was going to actually teach until like I got into student teaching, and I loved it. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I liked kids, but I didn't know if I had that passion to be around kids all the time. Right. I mean, now, you can't tear me. You really can't tear me away from it unless there's a big reason. Mm-hmm. But my parents, they were always skeptical of me doing the career, and they were afraid that I wouldn't be able to support myself and, make a decent living and just be able to be happy. So, when I did music education, I'm like, well, I can just be a music teacher. And they were like, okay. I should have probably said that my parents paid for my undergrad, which I'm very blessed and thankful for immensely for that. So they weren't very excited, but I got a teaching job pretty much like the next school year. I graduated in December, so I had to wait until like fall to get a job, and I got a teaching job. And I was working, and I was, making decent money, not a lot because they don't really pay teachers super well, but that's another conversation. Right. So, they saw that I was able to start supporting myself a little bit more. And then I joined the opera house. And I'm like, well, hey, it's extra money. And I'm like, I'm learning something I'm learning something brand new. I'm still perfecting my craft, and I get to still teach, which I loved. So that was cool. And I was just doing both. And then I got another job. I work at a church I do like, I have like a really tiny small choir, not right now because of the pandemic, but you know, I work with them and I do their music. So, you know, I'm all of my career choices have all been based on music, what I've learned. So my parents are super supportive. It's so funny because like a couple of years ago, overheard my mom on the phone talking to somebody. I forgot who it was. And I heard her saying, "Oh yeah, she's a mezzo soprano. She sings for the Michigan and da 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 da." And I'm sitting there like, "Who is this woman? who is it?" Like I'm like, "Oh, like." And my dad like happens to like pass by and he's like, "Yeah, she talks about you a lot to people."
Oh.
And like they're so proud. And like now that I was able to purchase my first home a few years ago, you know, and I'm living on my own, I can say that music is supporting my life. And that's always such a great feeling. And I love it.
That's
I really love
good.
it.
So we reached the end of our conversation, and I have one final question for you.
Sure,
And I
go
call
ahead.
this the Queen's Request. Okay. So I would like for you to suggest to me 1 to 2 Black Michigan women artists, and that could be in any genre, in music, dance, burlesque, poetry, anything. Women artists, and when I say women, I want to make sure that I'm referring to cis, trans, and non-binary individuals. Who should we be keeping an eye out for?
Gosh, there are 2. And one of them, I can't pronounce her last name very well. There is a young woman named Kaswana. I think her last name is Kayinde. I'll have to look it up, so I apologize for saying it incorrectly. She is an amazing singer. Opera Moto is a opera company that puts on all these great productions, you know, around Detroit as well. And she was singing one of their lead principal roles for, which opera was it? I think it was The Consul, and it was beautiful. I mean, you know, it's funny because I sing with these people like in the chorus sometimes, and I haven't sung with her that much. But I don't always listen to everyone else's voices. So I'm so worried about my own at that moment. But eventually you sit back and you relax and I listen because I have to blend at some points. Like I gotta be conscious. But I heard her sing and it was just amazing. Absolutely amazing. I was just blown away to hear how clear, how loud, how sharp her voice was. And I'm a fan of technique. I mean, I always strive to like get to be better. You know, I know this is not my quote unquote main career, like being an opera singer, but I love it and I take it seriously. You know, technique is something I so want to focus on. So that's one thing. And her technique is fantastic. Another person as well is Nicole Joseph. She was also in another production. I just can't think of it off the top of my head as well. Oh, it was Hansel and Gretel. They did that as well with the Opera Moto. And I went to see her singing in that, and just a beautiful lyric soprano. I mean, it was just, you know, when you can sit there and you're lost in the show because of just how glorious it sounds. I could close my eyes and just hear her sing. Yeah. And just be blessed by that beautiful sound. Like, I so love it when I have women who, especially Black women, who can show us what we can do. And I know they can really make it far. Yeah. Those are my 2 recommendations. So I would look out for them.
Now, is there anything that you want to promote, like any social media or a website?
No, I would just say, you know, please just support the arts in all its forms. You know, it's a tough time out there right now. I just want people to, you know, support the arts in any way you can. Remember, we'll be there. We'll be there for you. So just please support us. We'll support you. We'll give you all the love, and we'll make sure that we all get through this together.
Yes. Yes, definitely support the arts. Support your local theaters in the area. Because me coming from an actor's background and going to these different theaters, please definitely make sure that you are doing what you can to support your theaters, to let them know that you're still here, you're waiting for them to open back up. So yeah.
Yes, do that. They're out there. They're great. Michigan Opera Theater, Opera Moto. I'm just a good patron. So, hey, look out for them.
Well, I enjoyed our talk today. I appreciate you taking the time out and talking with me and talking about your music teaching career. It was so interesting, and I loved hearing you speak about your passion for teaching the kids, along with your passion of opera. And it was really great listening to you, and I appreciate you taking the time out sitting with me and talking about it.
Well, thank you, Ashley, so much for inviting me.
Yes.
It was great to talk to you.
It was great talking to you too.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. You can find Black Queens on Stage podcast and Black Literature and Art Queens Network at blackqueensonstage.com and blaqn.org. Follow me on Instagram at BLAQN Show Michigan, on Facebook at BLAQ Show Michigan, and on Twitter at BLAQNMI. You can find all this info in the show notes. Please rate the show and leave a review on Apple Podcast or on Podbean to let me know what you think of the show. Thanks again. Until next time.